hours before the ceremony even started, I was wonderfully gifted with the opportunity of getting my makeup done. And so this wonderful makeup artist worked her magic. And to all intents and purposes, I looked pretty good, except to my eyes. Because when I looked in the mirror, I heard that old, really stupid voice. I'm going to just call it out. It's a stupid voice whispering in my ear, "Who do you think you are to feel beautiful?" And let me tell you, for a little bit there, I almost let that voice steal my joy. And that's really how sneaky self-doubt can be. It shows up right when life is inviting you to shine. But thankfully, love called me back. And that's when I remembered that alignment isn't another strategy, it's a surrender.
I am Gloria Grace Rand, founder of the L.O.V.E Method and author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Live, Love, Engage: How to Stop Doubting Yourself and Start Being Yourself. In this podcast, we share practical advice from a spiritual perspective on how to live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically, so you can create a life and business with more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Live, Love, Engage.
Namaste. If you found your way to this podcast today because you needed a few minutes of peace before the holidays swallow you whole, I'm so glad you did. Today, we're going to be talking about year-end rituals. Now, not the kind that involve complicated spreadsheets or aggressive goal setting that, gives you some knots in your stomach. There's plenty of time for that. No, today we're going to be talking about the kind of ritual that soothes your soul, the kind that whispers, "You did it. You're still here, and that matters." So let's take a breath together, shall we? And let me officially welcome you to Live, Love, Engage, especially if it's your first time. I am Gloria Grace, confidence catalyst and self-love advocate, and I empower mission-driven women over 50 through my signature L.O.V.E method and energy healing to boldly live life on their terms. Now, before we get into all this, I just wanted to tell you a little story first. So just about a couple of weeks ago, I went on a 2-day road trip from Florida to Virginia with my husband and my daughter to ascend. Well, that's interesting. Actually, to attend our son's wedding. I was getting the S in son ahead of me. Anyway, this was the most time I've spent with my wonderful husband since we separated, actually, 3 years ago. And it was a very enlightening experience, and it brought up actually a lot of old disempowering patterns of thinking, frankly. For example, hours before the ceremony even started, I was wonderfully gifted with the opportunity of getting my makeup done. And so this wonderful makeup artist worked her magic. And to all intents and purposes, I looked pretty good, except to my eyes. Because when I got dressed afterwards and looked in the mirror, I heard that old, really stupid voice. I'm going to just call it out. It's a stupid voice whispering in my ear, "Who do you think you are to feel beautiful?" And let me tell you, for a little bit there, I almost let that voice steal my joy. And that's really how sneaky self-doubt can be. It shows up right when life is inviting you to shine. But thankfully, love called me back in the form of my son's wonderful embrace, my daughter's wonderful smile. Their presence pulled me out of my head and back into my heart. And that's when I remembered that alignment isn't another strategy, it's a surrender. Because when you shift from fear to trust, everything you've begun, or that you've been chasing, I should say, begins to meet you halfway. So before we do any year-end reflection, can we just set down whatever weight you might be carrying, like the shame about what didn't happen this year, or maybe the guilt about the clients you didn't sign, the content you didn't create, the version of yourself you thought you'd be by now. Okay? Just put it down right over here between us, and, I'll hold it with you for a minute, and then we'll just leave it there. Okay? Let's just breathe again. Because now what I want to do is I want to ask you something. And I want you to answer from your heart, not from your head, not from your inner critic. Let's live somewhere between the space between our ears. What if nothing went wrong this year? What if every pivot was actually just a course correction from your higher self? What if the clients who didn't sign freed up space for the ones who were meant for you? What if the exhaustion was your body screaming, "Pay attention, something needs to change"? Okay, now I'm going to give you some more to think about. And we're going to do it through the lens of my love method that I mentioned at the start. And if you happen to have a journal handy, or one that you can grab, you can pause this, go get your journal and maybe journal your answers. But probably, I think a better way to do it will be for you to just listen to the questions and then go back after this podcast is over when you have a few minutes, and then re-listen to this part. So it's about 6 minutes in or so. See, I'm even helping you out here. 6 or 7 minutes, depending. And journal your answers to these questions. Because here's the deal. Whatever you come up with is really what your year was about. Not necessarily your revenues or your profits or follower count, that. So we're going to do this, as I said, through the lens of the love method. And if you are new to the podcast, I'm going to go through what each of the love is an acronym. So the L stands for let go and let God. And the question I want you to answer is, what were you trying to control this year that the universe was actually handling? And that could be, it could be your social media presence. It could be email. It could be something even in your personal life. But just think about that for a little bit. What were you trying to control that the universe was actually handling? Okay. The O in love stands for open your heart to receive. So I've got a couple questions here. So number one is, what came to you when you stopped chasing? What came to you? What did you suddenly, maybe it was a new client when you stopped chasing them, that maybe new opportunities. What about maybe new opportunities? Maybe some interview opportunities came to you when you stopped chasing. And where did support show up that you almost missed? So think about that for a little bit. Now, the V in love stands for value your uniqueness. So what made you different that you tried to ignore this year? And conversely, where did you compare yourself into paralysis? So think about that for a little bit and answer those questions. And then lastly, the E stands for embrace your divinity. So when did you feel most aligned, even if you were tired? And what reminded you that you are love, not just doing loving things, but that you are the embodiment of love? Okay, so I'm gonna pause for one moment and take a drink of water while you are pondering these questions. And I might even still have another episode later after this one where we talk about planning and setting intentions for next year, which is definitely something good to do. But you don't have to do it this second. Instead, we're going to get to what we talked about at the beginning, where I wanted to offer you some year-end rituals that will allow you to close the year with grace. And I think these will be some good ways for you to be able to again, sort of give yourself an opportunity to reflect on the past year, because it's so good to be able to look back and see where you've been, what you did, and then that will give you some clues perhaps about where you want to go in the future and for next year. And for those of you listening, you should really watch it on YouTube, because I'm recording this in the afternoon. It's a fall day in Florida, and it's in the afternoon, and I keep having to like move back because the sun is just like shining all over my face. It's slightly distracting me. So go to YouTube and check it out. It's hysterical. So I'm going to try to just sit back and not let that distract me. All right. So let's do our year-end rituals. Yay. Okay. Number 1. This is a good ritual to use. Not only year-end, but you could use this pretty much anytime. I've done this before. It's the bonfire letter. So I've done this in the past where I've written a letter to people, maybe getting out all of the complaints I have about them. I know I wrote a letter to my mother once. But what I want you to do this time is to write a letter to the year that you've just been experiencing. And I'm going to also encourage you not only to think about your business, but also think about your personal life as well. And maybe you might even want to do 2 separate letters, depending. But I want you to thank it for the lessons, even the ones that were painful. And also you could, and if you want, I think you could also just go ahead and just vent. Use this letter as an opportunity to get your grievances out about the year. If things didn't turn out the way you wanted, express that first. And then, though, I'm going to challenge you to say thank you for it. Say, so here's an example. I'm going to say, so let's just pretend that you had a launch that you had really high expectations for, but for whatever reason, it just did not produce the revenue that you wanted. So you could write this letter and say, I am so disappointed and angry and mad that this launch didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. And I don't even really know why. I thought I did everything I was supposed to do. And, I did the emails and I did the social media postings, and I'm just really frustrated that it didn't turn out right. So get that out on paper first. And then you might want to then just sit with it for a moment, because you probably already have looked at the launch and done some reflections about it and tried to figure out why it didn't succeed. And so if you have done that already, and maybe you learned some lessons from it, because maybe you should have started promoting it earlier. So then what you could write down now into this letter is say, you know what? Thank you for this experience. It really was disappointing that it didn't turn out the way I wanted to. And I learned that it probably would have been a good idea to promote it 3 weeks ahead of time instead of 2 days. Okay, I'm exaggerating. I know you wouldn't do that. But just, express gratitude for the lessons, even the lessons you didn't want to learn or that were painful to learn. And then get yourself a bucket and go outside and burn that letter. Put it, let it fall into the bucket and collect the ashes there. Or you could just, tear it up into little tiny pieces. Or maybe if you've got a shredder, pop that baby in the shredding machine and just, and then, put it out in the trash or compost it, maybe even. So the idea is we're letting go. I talked about let go and let God. Well, we are just letting this stuff go. We are transmuting it to, sending it up for transmutation to the universe, and just let it go. So that, because we've got a new year coming, and we want to be able to just release stuff that doesn't serve you anymore. Okay. Ritual number 2 is calling this the completion conversation. So I want you to have a heart-to-heart talk with your business. Make sure nobody's around to hear you, of course. And ask it some questions. What did you need from me this year that you didn't get? That one landed in my heart. I'm going to have to ask that question too for me. I think I already know the answer, but I'm moving in a better direction now that I know it's getting what it needs from me now, but I think earlier in the year it didn't. Anyway, another question. What did I give you that nourished us both? So again, you can, if you want, you can just, ask these questions, silently and just see what comes to you. You might want to journal it out. And this is something you can either keep or get rid of. It's up to you. But yeah, just treat your business as a business partner and ask it these questions. So what did you need from me this year that you didn't get? And what did I give you that nourished us both? Okay. All right. Ritual number 3, the sanctuary day. So I invite you to pick a day between now and the end of the year, and don't do anything strategic. No planning, no visioning, no content creation. I want you to dedicate a day to yourself, just being with yourself. If you can do it where you can get away for the day, plan, it's like a little mini retreat you're going to give yourself. Maybe you can go somewhere, wherever. I mean, it depends on where you live, what the weather's like. Maybe if the weather's lousy, maybe you could just go to like a hotel and just sit in the lobby, go to the restaurant, sit in the lobby for a little while, just, go around somewhere there, and just spend time with yourself. I encourage you to just sit and look out the window. And this is not the time for journaling. This is not any type of busy work. Think of this as in fact, if you can, really find a way that you cannot be around people at all and just be with yourself. Several years ago now, gosh, it's probably been, it's been over 10 years, I think, or no, maybe not quite 10 years, maybe 8 years ago. I went on a silent retreat, a 10-day Vipassana silent retreat. And so, you show up on, I don't know, Saturday afternoon or whatever. They go through explaining how it's all going to work. And then the next day, you do not talk to anybody, except you can sign up to talk with like a coach like once a day if you really need to vent. And one of the ladies that I met there, she availed herself of that every day because she needed to talk to somebody. But for the most part, it was silent meals, silent meditation, brush your teeth in the silence, and no journaling. That was the thing too, is no journaling. You were not allowed. So it's just being with yourself, being with your own thoughts. And it was truly transformational for me. And I know for a lot of people it is. So I'm not asking you to do 10 days. I'm asking you to do 1 day. So if you can find a way to do that. And I think I want to do that myself. Silence the darn phones. Don't be on your computer. Just be with yourself. Your higher self is where all that wisdom resides anyway. But we've got to give ourselves that space to be able to hear it. And if you're not someone who does a regular meditation practice, which I highly recommend, where you cultivate this ability to be able to tune in and listen to your higher self, then this is a great way to start. To just do 1 day, be with yourself and see what thoughts come up, and just accept them. Don't try to second guess them. Don't be critical. No self-judgment. Even if it's just shopping lists that are going through your head, or maybe you're thinking of holiday presents you got to buy, whatever. It's okay. Just do your best to be still and know. I love that phrase. Be still and know. Okay. All right. Ritual 4. Number 4. This is a 3-question review. Not a business review, but a soul review. So again, this could be an opportunity for you to, I'm gonna give you 2 options here. So number 1, you could incorporate this ritual with ritual number 3. And as you're being with yourself, you could ask yourself these questions, or you can journal them, your answers to them. So here are the 3 questions. So number 1, when did I feel most alive this year? And then, of course, you want to reflect on what was going on. Why did that, whatever was going on, why did you feel most alive? And if it was something related to your business, like maybe, well, I'm going to give you an example from me. And this was just a few weeks ago, about 6 weeks ago or so. I conducted an in-person workshop, the first one I've done in several years. And it was lovely. I enjoyed it so much that I'm going to be doing it online in a couple of weeks, which I'm going to tell you about in a little while. but it was actually, you know what? Yeah, no, I'm going to tell you about it in a little while. But it was so great. We did all these experiential exercises, and I, people shared their thoughts, their answers that they journaled, and it was great. And so that's why I'm going to do it online this year, in a couple of weeks. And then in 2026, I definitely want to do it in person again, because there is that special magic when you're in person. I love online. It's great, but also in person is so good. All right. So that was the first question. When did I feel most alive this year? The second one is, when did I betray myself, and what can I learn from that? We have to do it's good to do some deep introspection from time to time. And this is not to beat yourself up over it, okay, either. This is just to be curious and then forgive yourself over it, because it doesn't do you any good to beat yourself up over it. If you did betray yourself, learn the lesson and then say, you know what? I'm sorry, business. I'm sorry I did that. And I will endeavor not to do that again. And then that's it. Let it go. And then finally, question 3 is, what does my future self want me to know? What does my future self want me to know? And that can be a very enlightening question. I answered the first one already, but I'm probably going to do these other 2 as well. Maybe after I get done recording this podcast today. Why not? Okay. Ritual 5. There we go. The sun's not on my hand. Okay. This is called the permission slip jar. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is get a little plastic jar. I started a jar this year where I was writing down things I was grateful for, and then I forgot to keep it up. So if you have some sort of, empty jar somewhere, what I want you to do is write yourself, get like 3 little pieces of paper, and this can be a very small jar, okay? Because you're only going to have 3 things in there. So one of them is going to say, I give myself permission to rest without guilt. I give myself permission to rest without guilt. The next one, I give myself permission to pivot midstream. Let me say that again. I give myself permission to pivot midstream. And then finally, I give myself permission to not have it all figured out. I give myself permission to not have it all figured out. And I want you to then maybe set that permission slip jar on your desk somewhere, or definitely have it handy, so that you can pull one of those out whenever you need it. And just, read it again and say, okay, I'm giving myself permission to rest without guilt. Because you know what? You need to do that. You need to do that. We have to take a break sometimes. And I think I was even talking about this, was it on the last episode, I think. Yeah. So all of these rituals, they're not productivity hacks, but they're really invitations to get to know yourself. Really, really to develop, to develop if you need to, but definitely to cultivate that inner knowing, because you have all the answers inside. You really do. Because I've learned this from my own experiences, building my business and then working with other women, is that the answers aren't in the next course or strategy or the next guru, but they're already inside you. They just get drowned out sometimes by all the noise. Now, as I mentioned, one that I feel most alive this year, doing my workshop, well, I'm going to be hosting the same workshop. We're going to do it because we're going to use Zoom so we can have breakout rooms and do experiential exercises. And it's called the Awakening Your Inner Light workshop. And it's going to be a 90-minute online event. It takes place Thursday, November 20th, 1 p.m. Eastern. And it's going to give you an opportunity to release resistance, to release stress, reconnect with your center, and remember your worth. Because essentially, we're going to be going over the love method that I talked about, but I'm going to go into more detail about it and then allow you to do some exercises where you can actually, beyond what I talked about today, these are really good exercises for the end of the year, for just to really get centered as we're embarking on the end of the year and the holidays and all of that stress that comes with that sometimes. So I encourage you to give yourself the gift of stillness before that. So you can go to bit.ly/innerlight2025. And I'll have that in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, my intention is to have a QR code there so that you'll be able to scan that as well. Hopefully that works out, and that's my intention. So again, bit.ly, Inner Light 2025. The workshop is on a love offering basis. So if you, when you go to the registration page, you'll find some options where if you want to, invest some money towards it before, or maybe you feel that you would like to share something afterwards, an energy exchange afterwards, that's great too. But I don't want to turn anyone away. So I don't let money stop you from registering. All right. Okay, so going to be wrapping this up before too long, but before I do, I want to let you tell you something that might sting a little, but it's coming from a place of love. So December doesn't owe you clarity. December doesn't owe you a perfect plan for next year. It doesn't even owe you redemption for what didn't work this year. What it does offer you instead is rest, integration, space between the exhale and the inhale. So just take a pause. Just pause a little bit. Because let's face it, this time of year is often a time of year where we put a lot of pressure on January 1st. There's this pressure, a new year, new you. And, you can, a lot of people start new health resolutions, in fact. And, they come off the holidays and they're ready to, start that new diet. Well, you don't need to be new. You don't need to be new on January 1st. You just need to be more you of who you are right now. So what if you just continued how you are right now? And maybe after doing some of these year-end rituals, you're a little wiser and you've got some ideas about how to move forward. Isn't that a better way to go? The book behind me, that book, for those of you who are listening, you don't see it, but there's a book that I wrote called Live, Love, Engage, How to Stop Doubting Yourself and Start Being Yourself. And that idea for that book came about during a meditation. I was meditating, and all of a sudden this idea popped into my head that said, you should write a book about love. And I thought it was crazy, but I didn't wait until January. I didn't just create a vision board to do this. I just got up, went to my computer and said, opened up a Word doc and said, okay, if I'm going to write a book about love, what would it be? What is love? Even though this idea came to me a couple of months just before my sister passed from cancer. So I just moved ahead anyway, even in the middle of dealing with that really difficult season. And I went with it, even though I thought it was crazy because I was doing marketing at the time, not any type of spiritual development type of work. But the book taught me how to love myself, which was the point all along. So what if your breakthrough isn't waiting for the calendar to turn? What if it's available right now in this messy middle? So instead of asking yourself, what do I want to achieve next year? Got another question. Maybe you could try asking, who do I want to become? How do I want to feel? What do I want to be known for? Not by others, but by my own soul. Oh, yeah. And then, I know a lot of people talk about doing this, and I've done it oftentimes, is to come up with a word for 2026. Not necessarily a goal word, but a feeling word, a being word, something like spacious or courageous or certain. And let that word guide you rather than a big, 47-point action plan. So for instance, for me, I actually received something in the mail not too long ago, and it had a little card or magnet to put on, and it has, what is your 2026 word of intention? And so what came to me right away was prosperity. That's what I want to embody. And now, frankly, I don't want to even necessarily have to have it start in 2026. So let's just start thinking about being prosperous now. And it's not only prosperity is more than money. It's about just being, an abundance, an abundance of love, an abundance of friends, an abundance of clients. Will be nice too. Don't get me wrong. But just to be prosperous and prosperous in health, good health. And yeah, so that's my word. So I would love to hear what yours is, all right. So before we close out now, I want to share one other thing with you that if you are regular subscriber of the podcast, you know that when I do these solo episodes, I always like to do this. So I want to share a light language message with you today. And for those of you who just went, huh? Like Scooby-Doo going, huh? What? So light language is it's an energetic communication. And it is something that speaks to your soul, speaks to your heart. When you hear it, you may or may not understand it with your brain. And that's okay. Because again, it's not necessarily for your brain to understand. It's for your heart to understand. It's for your soul to understand. And if you're listening to this podcast while you're driving your car, pause it and come back, because I want you to be able to be in a space where you can just be still, to be able to close your eyes if you like, and just let what comes through just wash over you. And what I always do, and I do this when I'm working with clients who I share a light language with, is to set an intention that the message that you are going to receive is for your soul's highest good and the highest good of all concerned. So I invite you to set that intention for yourself. That, okay, whatever I'm going to hear, Gloria, share right now is going to be for my soul's highest good. Okay. So I hope by now that you are sitting somewhere quietly. Like I said, you can close your eyes if you like and just take a deep breath in, let it out, and we'll begin in a moment. Akshan no Korea Pata. Konana koyono koyonake. Adno Korea moine. Asakoshan no Korea Pa. Koreano kaha kahiano kiata. Eshakashin no Korea Patokuma. Kaleano kiata nane. Sakashan no Korea Patunka. Alayano Korea Bashinka. Tuka no yanake. Anakaya noa, Ashakashanakaya Patankolia, Kuyamanakalea, Sanakri, O Nakaya Batakoya Manochinka, Tariato Tim Makiato, Una he Kaliata Twea by Shakariana, Kuma Tiakarate, Shakashakata. Thank you. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for listening and watching and letting me be part of your year-end ritual. And for trusting yourself enough to listen to a voice that says you are enough, you are love, you are exactly where you need to be. So until next time, make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. And until then, be gentle with yourself. You're doing better than you think. And I encourage you to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.